pyrotechnic devices may have been used in the early morning hours on April the 19th, 1993 at Waco. At this time, all available indications are that the devices were not directed at the main wooden compound, were discharged several hours before the fire started, and were not the cause of the fire.
And Bill Clinton orchestrated that takeover, and in fact was so ashamed about what he did in Waco that he was not going to appoint Janet Reno to a second four-year term. And she told him in a meeting right before the inauguration day for his new term that if you don't appoint me, I'm going to tell the truth about Waco.
Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
Flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line with Jane Stanley in Manhattan. Perhaps we can rejoin her and follow that up later.
Open Line Friday is what it is. We don't allow kooks. Kookery is never allowed here. And if you're going to talk about 9/11 being an inside job and that Khalik Sheikh Mohammed, if you're going to start agreeing with Rosie O'Donnell, I would suggest rehab and treatment, counseling and so forth, because like Rosie, you've probably got really deep issues from your childhood that need to be resolved, because you, sir, are a glittering jewel of Colossus.
Close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual site of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon and then caused the side to collapse. Now, even though if you look at the pictures of the Pentagon, you see that the floors have all collapsed, that didn't happen immediately. It wasn't until almost about 45 minutes later that the structure was weakened enough that all of the floors collapsed.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Now, the term pull, which you just saw Larry Silverstein use, is an industry term that means to demolish, a controlled demolition. What did Larry Silverstein exactly say here? Did he say World Trade Center 7 was a controlled demolition? If so, is it conceivable that through all the melee and hysteria that was going on the morning of September 11th, a demolition crew could have came in and taken down World Trade Center 7 within 7 hours? Most controlled demolitions take up to 2 weeks in intense planning to make happen. If this is the case, the only explanation that makes sense is that a controlled demolition was planned way in advance of September 11th, 2001.
On at least one occasion, Eisenhower was heard to say by those in the room, "God help this country when somebody sits at this desk who doesn't know as much about the military as I do."
My fellow Americans, this evening I come to you with a message of leave-taking and farewell, and to share a few final thoughts with you, my countrymen. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process.
Let me go to Celia in Fort Worth, Texas. We just had Deborah Medina on, but she wouldn't distance herself from 9/11 truthers. Said a lot of good questions have been asked, but she doesn't know if the government killed 3,000 people on 9/11. Let's go to Celia now on line 7. Hi, Celia.
Yes, Glenn. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I am comparing what you've done to Deborah Medina to somebody who votes only one issue, such as looking at somebody and saying, they don't believe in gun control, therefore I won't vote for them. I really think you've been totally unfair with her. She has an awful lot of good ideas to do with Texas.
She does. You know who else had a lot of good ideas? No, seriously. Why would you judge this man on just one thing?
No.
Why would you judge a man on just one issue?
We understand. Please, no further, please.
Why?
I beg of you.
On just one issue. You also
I know. That one issue of the government intentionally killing 3,000 people on 9/11. You don't think that taints?
She didn't say she believed in that.
No, she didn't.
Say that.
No, she didn't. She said she didn't. There's a lot of great questions there, and we should look into that. Well, then why is she looking into property taxes? Why would you pay a single dime to the United States of America? Why would you pay a single penny in income tax to a government that killed intentionally 3,000 people on 9/11? That would be your top priority, wouldn't it, Celia?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, you don't know about that. Get off my phone. Get off my phone. Get off my phone, Celia. Phil in Texas, you're on the Glenn Beck program.
Glenn, thanks for taking my call. Hey, listen, I listen to you every day, and I do support Deborah Medina. So, I mean, I'm obviously a Medina supporter, and I was really disappointed in that. I guess you could say I was a run-of-the-mill Republican. I'm sorry?
Wait. You were disappointed in her answer or in my interview with her?
In the interview down in Texas, it's brewing up. I mean, you've nailed it. You wrote the script over the years when you're talking about South. Well, I'm in South Texas, down in Texas.
Yeah.
We are just the people. We're very upset, and
I understand that.
And Deborah Medina and all her policies, and you're normally a guy that cares about policies, and we're talking about a governor's race for the state of Texas, and you're making the 9/11.
Wait a minute, Phil. Are you a 9/11 truther?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you're excusing somebody who wants to run and have power. You're saying it's okay if they haven't thought through 9/11 enough to know whether the government of the United States of America killed 3,000 people.
Listen, you're intriguing. You're interrogating. You are becoming.
No, Phil. I'm asking you a question as a citizen of the United States. It's the same question I demanded that Barack Obama answer with Van Jones, but he wouldn't answer it. It is time for Americans to answer the damn question.
It is not our litmus test in the state of Texas, Glenn Beck.
Okay, well, there you go. Good luck with that. Vote for her. Yeah. You have it. I'm not saying that you can't vote for a 9/11 truther. I'm saying don't bury your head in your sand. What are you? What are you, out of your mind? You are willing to sacrifice. That's a pretty big issue. That's not like, well, do you drive American cars or foreign cars? This is the United States government evil? Yes or no?
Open Line Friday is what it is. We don't allow kooks. Kookery is never allowed here. And if you're going to talk about 9/11 being an inside job and that Khalik Sheikh Mohammed, if you're going to start agreeing with Rosie O'Donnell, I would suggest rehab and treatment, counseling and so forth, because like Rosie, you've probably got really deep issues from your childhood that need to be resolved.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improved understanding of the news, as well as improved transmission. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be.
I'm saying don't bury your head in your sand. What are you? What are you, out of your mind?
Kookery is never allowed here.